Natia washed her hands in the outside basin. Thankfully, none of the vomit had splashed on her. For the rest of the evening she worked in the kitchen, washing, serving, and answering to the beck and call of every guest. Long after the last one departed, Natia worked late into the night beside her mother, cleaning up the house in the aftermath of the party. By the time she was finished, Natia was too tired to eat the succulent food that had been set aside for the servants. She carried her plate of rice, chicken tikka, and sautéed cauliflower, along with a glass of warm cola, to Shirzad's room. Empty chairs, dirty glasses, and discarded paper napkins were strewn across the yard. As she passed the debris, she made a note to herself to clean it up before she went to bed. It would be one less thing that the servant boy would get scolded for tomorrow. Shirzad was staring up at the ceiling and lying on the charpai, an arm and a leg hanging carelessly off the bed. Natia stayed by his door. "Brought you some food." He did not look at her. "So many stars out tonight," he murmured. "Have you noticed?" Natia peered up at the dark ceiling and wondered if he'd lost his mind. "I'm in no mood to play." Shirzad finally tore his gaze from the ceiling and looked at her. "Come see." Gingerly he moved to the far edge of the bed where the bamboo frame pressed up against the wall. A fine stream of crumbling cement fell like loose sand onto his kurta, and he brushed it away. "You can see the stars through the hole in the roof. There's no light in here, so they shine even brighter." Natsia wanted to ask how anything could look brighter or more wondrous from such a dismal vantage point. Instead, she put the plate on the ground and entered the cramped room. She sat on the edge of the bamboo frame and craned her neck upward, seeing nothing but blackness. "You can't see it from here. You have to scoot down a bit." Natsia glanced at him. His fever had broken, his hair was matted with sweat, and his shirt stuck to his chest. The air in the room was still, and she wondered how he survived sleeping in the dark alone night after night with no one to comfort him. She placed a hand on his forehead and was glad that his skin felt cool. "You cold?" She looked about for his blanket, then stopped when she remembered that she had used it earlier to wipe the vomit from the Mem Sahib's shalwar. He shook his head. She ran a hand across her cheek, recalling the stinging slaps she had received when she had tried to tell Seema that Shirzad was sick. The boy didn't know what she had endured in order to find him help. One of the guests, a doctor, had eventually taken pity on him and informed the Sahib of Shirzad's condition. The Sahib had immediately given him the medicine to reduce the fever. Natsia lay back on the knotty bed, her head pressed close to the boy's. He was so small that she wanted to curl him up against her the way she did with Isha every night. She pushed aside the thought and looked straight up to the ceiling, where a brilliant display of celestial magic played out in the gaping hole of the corrugated tin roof. The opening had been deliberately cut, the malleable metal bent up and out to make a private window. A beam that held the roof in place blocked the view from the doorway, and she imagined that whoever had cut the opening, Shirzad himself, one of his predecessors, had taken that small but important fact into consideration. "It's beautiful." She struggled with her thoughts before finally summoning up the courage to ask the question that had swirled around her mind for days. "Why do you stay here?" He shrugged. "No choice." "But where's your family?" "My Amma and Abu live near the railway station. My daddy lives in Punjab." His voice was soft at the thought of his father's mother. "My brothers and sisters are spread out from Clifton Beach to beyond Zainab Market. Don't know exactly where. We haven't all been together in a long time." His words tumbled around Natsia. She couldn't imagine being his age, her little sister's age, growing up among strangers. An image of her older brother flashed in her mind, a smiling brother who used to play cricket with her and help her with her homework. Could Bilal see the stars from wherever he lay tonight? "Why does everyone live apart?" "You know how it is. Your brother's gone, your Abu is back, families split to earn a living. My Amma promised Baji that I would stay here for 3 full harvest seasons before I could go home." "3 years?" she asked. "They pay you to work here. They can't force you to stay." Shirzad snorted. "I may be younger than you, but I've been doing this a lot longer than you have." "You can leave any time." Shirzad sat up and hugged his knees close to his chest. "It's not the Mem Sahib that makes me stay. It's my Amma. Amma bound each of her children to one family or another so that she always has money coming in. She spends her time going from one house to the next all around the city, collecting our pay. How could a mother do that to her own children? Didn't she realize how badly Shirzad was being treated? Who knew how the others lived? How many of you are there? Natsia asked. 7, 4 sisters and 3 brothers, including me. Are you the youngest? Of course not. He puffed out his chest the same way he had done on the first day they met. I have 2 sisters, babies, younger than me. Are they with your mother? No, the babies stay with my daddy in Punjab, but when they are old enough, Amma will bring them to the city to work. Not all Ammas are as cruel and selfish as yours. I bet if you asked your mother, she'd let you find work near her. He rested his chin on his knees. Yes, they are, Natsia. All mothers are that cruel. Look at Baji. She's an Amma. She's so mean that all her kids have grown up and run away. None of them come to visit, not even the ones still in Pakistan. That was true. Seema Baji always talked about her children and what a great success they were in all corners of the world, but not one ever came to visit, and only rarely did an operator pass through a telephone call from outside the country. Well, you haven't known many good women, Shirzad. Look at my mother. She would never hand us to strangers to feed herself. No? All the mothers want to marry off the girls so they can get rid of you and have one less mouth to feed. My mother's not like that. Natsia sat up. She's not trying to get rid of me. She just wants to see me settled and happy. Shirzad laughed. I have 2 older sisters. Amma married them both in Punjab. One of them lives just outside of Multan. She works in the fields, tends to goats, and cares for her husband's entire family. The other is barely older than you. She stays at a Haveli and looks after the children from the Sarkar's other wives. None of them are happy. Nobody cares if you're happy. Natsia suddenly remembered Shanaz. Had she cared for her husband's other wife and their children before deciding that she'd rather be free of them? We all follow whatever path our mothers have laid out for us, Shirzad continued. We all do whatever our Ammas tell us, just like you do. What if he was right? Amma had pulled her out of school and forced her to work with her. Now that her engagement had fallen through, was Amma relieved to have her daughter with her for a few more months? Or was she worried about how to get rid of her? She pushed aside the thought, unwilling to believe that her own mother could ever become as cruel and heartless as Shirzad's. She scooted off the charpai and stepped out of the room. The plate of food in the driveway was cold, but she retrieved it anyway and set it on Shirzad's charpai. Eat this. You need to build up your strength after the fever. Without a word, the boy began shoveling the food into his mouth with his fingers. Natsia headed to the lawn to clean up the debris. In the distance, a bicycle guard's shrill whistle blew strong, then trailed off into nothingness as he pedaled away down the street. While she picked up the shredded napkins and discarded glasses, a single thought nagged her. Why had Amma turned away and done nothing when Seema had slapped her? Shafts of sunlight pierced between the wooden slats of the door and penetrated deep into the servant quarters. A sharp rapping sound woke Natsia, and she groaned, feeling the stiff muscles in her arms and shoulders protest as she stretched. The door banged open, and late morning sunlight flooded the room. She shielded her eyes until they adjusted to the intense light and squinted at the figure in the doorway. Wake up, Natsia. You've had enough sleep to last a week. Amma moved into the room and patted her shoulder. Get up. Despite the fact that the room was already stifling, a wave of air, even more humid, enveloped Natsia like a wet sheet. She groaned again as Amma helped her sit up. I hardly slept, she mumbled. Go wash and do it quickly. Seema is taking you to the Sunday bazaar. Amma lifted the rumpled sheet and folded it before tossing it onto the foot of the bed. Natsia rubbed the sleep from her eyes. Seema always took Shirzad to the bazaar. Was the Baji regretting her behavior last night and allowing the boy a day's rest? She kissed her mother and slipped into her chappals before hurrying to the washroom. She smoothed her hair and kept the same clothes, remembering that the Sunday bazaar was held in an open field where the wind lifted up the tethered tents in waves and sand swept through the bazaar in swirls. When she reached the front gate, Amma handed her 200 rupees and ran through a list of items for Natsia to buy for the family. As she listened, she noticed that the door to Shirzad's room was closed. How could he sleep with the door closed? He would die in the heat. She moved to open it, but Amma grabbed her arm. He's not there. Natsia looked at her. What? He's not there, she repeated. That's why Baji is taking you. He ran away. Natsia smiled. Good for him. She leaned closer to her mother. We talked last night. I'm sure he went to ask his mother if he could stay with her. Did you tell him to run away? Of course not. He's not a slave, Amma. He should be allowed to come and go as he pleases. She told her about how Shirzad's mother had practically sold him to Baji. I told him that he should ask his mother if he could live with her. Maybe she could find him work close by. Natsia's mother shook her head. You have no business interfering with that boy's life. He knows no other way of living. But I only wanted him to see that not all mothers are as mean as his. You are giving him hope for a life that is not his fate. How can you know what his fate holds? Natsia, don't push me. He's too young to see beyond the present. If you force him, then he can never be happy no matter where he is. What are you talking about? He has a right to hope for something better. Do you think I want to spend the rest of my life cleaning houses? I hope for something better too, Amma. So should you. All you can hope for is to get married to a good man and pray that he treats you well. That is your fate. That is your fate for me. What if I want something different? Amma's fingers dug into Natsia's flesh. What else could you possibly want? You've always known how your life would be. Don't start thinking too much, or I warn you, you will be responsible for your own unhappiness just as you will be responsible for ruining Shirzad's life. His mother put him here for a reason. She knows what is best for him. Natsia jerked her arm away from Amma and stalked off to gather the baskets. Before Amma had pulled her out of school, Natsia would have believed everything that her mother said or did without a second thought. But things were different now. Amma was doing what she thought she had to do to keep them fed and warm at night. But was it the right thing to do? When did Natsia have the right to start thinking on her own? Was there some unwritten law that said even when things were going wrong, when the choices that her parents made led to one disaster after another, she had to ride the waves holding her breath? Even if it meant being pulled in by their reckless current and never knowing when or where she would surface? Seema stepped outside, already fanning herself. With the Sahib using their only car, Seema had borrowed the neighbor's driver to take them to the market. Natsia grabbed the baskets and slipped into the back seat next to Seema. As Amma closed the gate behind them and the driver pulled away, Natsia prayed that Shirzad's mother would welcome him home and that the little boy would never return. Her fingers twisted around the basket handles, surprised at the boy's boldness. At least he had the courage to choose his own road.